Welcome to the Weekly Roar, coming live from the Lion's Den, helping new managers become great leaders and awesome bosses. And now, here's your host, Greg Storch.
Coming live from my quarantine headquarters in Vicenza, Italy. Welcome to the Lion's Den, everybody. This is the Weekly Roar. Today, I want to talk about a leadership lesson that I don't think many people spend time thinking into. You know, it takes a lot of courage to be a leader, and we naturally want to seek the approval of those we lead, especially when it comes time to make tough decisions. But what I've learned is that I can't lead people if I need people. I'm going to explain myself in just a second, but first, my name is Greg Storch. I'm the owner of Lion Enterprise, host of the Weekly Roar, and the founder of a worldwide bartered coaching program called The Helping Hand. I'm a certified professional leadership coach and a certified leadership speaker and trainer. Now, if you joined us last week in the Lion's Den, or if you caught the replay of the Weekly Roar, then you got to hear me talk about the important role that personal growth plays in our success, both personally and professionally. If you want to improve in life or your leadership, you have to be a good learner. You have to have a plan for your personal growth. If you don't, you won't grow. And you know what they say, if you aren't growing, you're dying. Now, if you weren't able to join us last Wednesday for the Weekly Roar, or if you need to get caught up, or maybe you just want to watch that session over again, you can access the free video resources on my website at www.lion-enterprise.com. Now, when you get to the homepage, just click on the Lion's Pride Library menu and find video number 138 for last week. And while you're in the Lion's Pride Library, make sure you look around and stay a while. It's a free resource, and it's a great way for you to get more of the roar. Okay, it's time to get today's lesson learned in leadership started. And I'm calling this one, Sometimes the Worst Brings Out the Best. One of the ways that leaders really set themselves apart as great leaders is how they lead during tough times. Man, is this an appropriate lesson learned today or what? As a young leader in the Navy, I remember I had a strong desire for those I was leading to like me and approve of me and approve of my decisions, of course. When it came time for me to make tough decisions, I would look to my own leaders for guidance, and I would almost blame my decisions on the higher ups. You know, I had this tendency to say things like, hey, we're going to need to do this because the Master Chief said we needed to do it. See, in my mind, that was a really great way to take the heat off of me and put it somewhere else. I could get done what needed to get done and still not be the bad guy for it. Hey, it wasn't my decision. It's what the Master Chief wants, right? Having the need to seek the approval of others as a leader, even as I was just a baby leader, I learned that it could become a big problem for me much later down the road. Wanting all the good things associated with leadership and a leadership role and avoiding the hard leadership things is like wanting all the perks of leadership, but not paying the price of leadership. Now, this is one of many times in my career where I had to make a decision about what I perceived to really be a weakness in my leadership, that desire for approval. That decision actually reminds me a little bit about The Lion King, actually. Now, I'm assuming that you all have seen The Lion King. I hope so. So in that movie, Simba is the lion cub who's next in line to assume the throne. Well, that was me as a young leader, okay? So remember the part where Simba's father dies in the ravine at the hands of his brother Scar? Well, Scar convinces Simba that his father's death is Simba's fault. And then Simba asks, "What do I do?" And his uncle tells him, "Run away, Simba. Run away and never return." Well, that's exactly what Simba does. He runs away from it. But he eventually returns and takes his rightful place at the top of Pride Rock. So that was me. I could either run away from my weakness of needing to seek others' approval, or I could try to overcome that weakness. And I hope you all can guess the choice that I made. Now I'm going to pause here a second because if you've been following this series, you may remember that I shared a lesson learned about focusing on our strength zone, right? I actually told you that I shouldn't be spending time improving my weaknesses, but focusing on my strengths. And I want you to remember that because it's absolutely true. But this is different. Why? Because I consider this to be a character issue that if I hadn't addressed it, then it would have made me less effective in my leadership. Now, the whole purpose of leadership is to be able to take people where they couldn't go on their own, to inspire others to do things that they just never dreamed that they could do. Now, as a servant leader, I believe the only way I can do that for those I lead is to care for my followers and remain close to them. Now, hear me out, because I know there are other leadership beliefs, right or wrong, and I'm not judging, but those beliefs make leaders believe they should distance themselves from their followers. They subscribe to the belief that it's lonely at the top when you're a leader. So I say this. There are times, of course, when leaders have to move forward with courage and without waiting for approval from others. It isn't healthy for a leader to need others' approval. Now, you've heard the saying, you can't please everybody. And that's a simple truth. And I accepted that truth and I understand it. When we try to please everyone, it results in just alienating everyone. The best thing a leader can do is stay true to their vision and their people, even when it's not popular. I would say that that's one of the prices that we have to pay to be a leader. Now, I don't mean this to sound arrogant, but you can't lead people if you need people. Of course, leaders need people. Without them, we aren't really leading, are we? I heard this quote so many times before, and I've even seen it attributed to my mentor, John Maxwell, but I've also seen it attributed as an Afghan proverb. And that states, if you think you're leading and no one is following you, then you're only taking a walk. Now, I titled today's lesson, Sometimes the Worst Brings Out the Best. And I decided to call it that because it's during the tough times in our leadership when we're called upon to make the tough decisions that really distinguish us in our leadership. And to be distinguished in leadership, well, that means to be recognized by others as being different. I often say that it takes courage to be a leader. And when I say that, it's not the everyday decision making. That just requires a little common sense. That's a good 95% of a leader's job. But what distinguishes leaders is that other 5%. The 5% makes up those tough calls that you have to make. It's making those calls during change, during challenges, and really during crisis, right? And how leaders handle those things is what distinguishes their leadership as being great. Now, I'm not making a political statement, but all we have to do is look back over the past year to see daily examples of leaders running away to never return from making tough, unpopular decisions. Since the tough calls don't make up a majority of our day as leaders, then I think one of the most important things that I can help you do is to help you know when that time has come for you. Just like when Simba knew it was time for him to return to Pride Rock. How did he know? Well, there were 3 things that Simba experienced when it was time to make a tough call. You ready? Making the tough call to return to Pride Rock came with risk. That's right. Whenever risk is involved, it can be a sign for a leader that they're about to have to make a tough call. Now, in Simba's case, returning to Pride Rock carried a huge risk for him. The biggest was that he believed he was still responsible for his father's death. And the lion's pride back home believed Simba was also killed in that stampede. Once the pride realized he was alive the entire time, they would naturally question why he had stayed away for so long while the grassy plains got destroyed. It would have been easier for Simba to just stay back in his oasis with Pumbaa and Timon than to face the scrutiny of the pride. But leaders, they have to do things that others won't do. They put themselves on the line. Good leaders are willing to take a risk. If you aren't willing to take a risk, then you shouldn't be in leadership because you'll never move forward if you're always playing it safe. So remember, progress always requires that we take risks, and that's how leaders move themselves, their organizations, and others forward. The tough calls will always demand that we take risks. So the second thing that was a sign that Simba was facing a tough call, the second thing that we should be aware of is that having to make a tough call creates this inner battle. Now, you have to remember that Simba was made to believe that he was responsible for his father's death, right? So, of course, he struggled with the decision to return to Pride Rock. It wasn't that he couldn't just go back there physically. Nothing was really stopping him except everything he was going through internally. He felt guilty, and that created an internal struggle to make the decision to return to Pride Rock. And he continued to convince himself that he was just fine where he was at. Remember? Hakuna Matata. It's a worry-free philosophy. It means no worries. Well, tough calls are called that for an obvious reason. They're tough. If they were clear and easy, they wouldn't be tough calls and anybody would be able to make them. What makes a tough call and what creates that battle within us is that we know whatever decision we make, it will be questioned, it's going to get criticized, and it will result in certain consequences. And that should weigh heavily on a leader. I remember that some of the most difficult decisions I had to make all started with me, not others. The battle within to do the greatest good for the greatest number made it a tough call. Doing the right thing isn't always easy, but it is always necessary if you're a leader who has integrity. Here's the thing with this one. We have to win our own internal battle before we can be ready to fight the one we'll face after making the tough call. So spend time making sure you're absolutely convinced that the call you're going to make is the right one. Once you're convinced, you'll have the courage to stand by your decision no matter how tough the call is or how difficult the aftermath becomes. All right, the third thing that was a sign that Simba was about to make a tough call was that it would end up distinguishing him as a leader. Tough calls, tough times, and tough decisions are what distinguish our leadership. It's the actions we take during that 5% of the time. Now, once Simba won that internal battle that was created by the call to return to Pride Rock, making the tough decision to return is what distinguished him as a leader. When Simba returned to the Pride, he saw the devastation that had taken place under the wrongful leadership of his uncle, Scar. He learned that he wasn't responsible for Mufasa's death, and he was faced with the tough call of removing his uncle from the throne. Now, of course, his decision wasn't popular with the hyenas who had been living high on the hog. See what I did there? But the pride had been suffering and starving to death. So Simba knew that he had to take his rightful place as the Lion King. When the right person is the leader, they excel during the tough times. And that's why I say sometimes it takes the worst to bring out our best. It's easy to lead when things are going great. I mean, I always loved reporting to a new duty station when I was taking over for someone who had led well before me. All I had to do was jump out in front and keep moving forward. But like Simba returning to the devastated plains of the Pride Lands, when things are actually going in the wrong direction, that's when leaders really earn their keep. That's when we pay the price for leading others. You know, the most effective leaders are the ones who make the tough decisions in tough times. And when they do, they distinguish themselves as leaders. So those are the 3 clues that you're about to make a tough call. Here they are again. First, it involves risk. Leaders can't always play it safe and expect to make forward progress. Progress always requires risk. Second, tough calls always create a battle within us. We will have to overcome the struggle, the fear of criticism, being questioned, and the possible consequences that can result from the decisions we make. And once we win that battle, we'll be hardened and ready to fight the external battle that will surely come once that decision has been made. And then the third thing is making that tough call is going to distinguish you as a leader. See, effective leaders make tough decisions during tough times. And at the end of the day, that's why leadership is needed. It's easy to navigate the easy path, but it requires a leader to move through the difficult times. Tough times are going to either make us or break us. And I hope that by sharing this lesson learned about leadership will help you be prepared for when the time comes that you need to make that tough call. Being prepared for the big time will have a lot to do with what you do in the moments that precede it. Work on developing your willingness to do the small things, the difficult things, and the unseen things. And that's what's going to help you to get prepared for major difficulties. Doing well with the little things prepares us for the big things. And when you perform well during those difficult and the most challenging times, well, that's where we establish our leadership reputation. Remember this: when the going gets tough, the tough get leading. Be on the lookout for the signs and opportunities to make tough decisions. If you've made them before, then you know what that looks and feels like. But if not, I want you to be ready for it, because you're going to get the chance. And when you do, when the time comes to make the tough call, to meet your greatest challenge, recognize it for the opportunity that it is. And that's the opportunity to distinguish yourself as a leader. All right, everyone, that's a wrap. Thanks so much for joining me today. I appreciate you, and I look forward to our next episode. I'm really excited about next week's lesson too, because next week, it's something that's really true, but often overlooked. It's one of the driving forces behind what I do at Lion Enterprise and what my free ebook is all about. That's right. Next Wednesday, I'm going to speak about the secret behind your attrition rates. If you want to keep running to the roar, then come back to the Lion's Den next Wednesday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time and join me for the weekly roar. Thanks, everybody, for showing up today. I appreciate you, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Until then, remember, be powerful, but stay poised just like a lion. Bye, everybody.
Thanks for watching the Weekly Roar live event at lionenterprise.com. If you enjoyed this video, please tell others to join us each week here in the Lion's Den. Thanks again, and see you next week.